In the summer of 1984, heat lay thick over the Louisiana bayou like a wet quilt. Cicadas buzzed in waves, and the water dark as oil, and thick with algae barely stirred. It was here 5 years after his disappearance that a teenage boy named Nolan Dupree stumbled upon a small, weather-worn aluminum boat lodged deep in the reeds near Lake Maurepas. He hadn't meant to find it. Nolan had wandered off the usual trails chasing the shriek of a heron when his foot sank into mud and the glint of rusted metal caught his eye. The boat, half submerged and wedged between cypress roots, was draped in vines and cattails. Its paint had peeled away in long curls. One of the oars floated nearby waterlogged and bleached. Inside, things were worse. Blood long dried to a black smear trailed across the bow and down the seat. A badge ripped clean through the middle lay beside a rotting coil of nylon rope. A cracked plastic tackle box, sun-faded to pale blue, sat open its contents, half-scattered rusty hooks, warped lures, and beneath them, something else. A folded letter. The paper was brittle. The ink bled in places by humidity, but the words remained legible. You think putting me away made you clean. You think 5 years in Angola made me forget. We're not done, old man. At the bottom, no name, only a single initial. L. Deputy Roth, who later examined the scene, noted another detail. Inside the tackle box, nestled among cigarette butts and a broken lighter, was an empty matchbook from Earl's Liquor, Harold's favorite haunt. The butts were Winston Reds, a rare choice. Only a handful of locals smoked them. Harold's son-in-law, Mitchell Lang, was one of them. And finally, under the warped rear seat cushion, they found something easy to miss: a curled photograph. Faded almost to sepia, but still clear enough to make out two men, Harold and his fishing partner, Ray Ledoux, locked in a tense argument over what looked like a small stained ledger. In the summer of 1979, the quiet river parish town of Bayou, Louisiana, was unsettled by the disappearance of retired officer Harold Tabb. He had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a single cryptic clue: an empty boat with blood on the seats. But 5 years later, when Nolan Dupree stumbles upon that sunken craft, he uncovers a truth so twisted it would unravel the very fabric of a family's history and lead to the most horrifying revelation imaginable. The last confirmed sighting of Harold Tabb was on June 19, 1979, just after dawn. He'd stopped by the bait shack off Highway 51, picked up crickets and catfish stinkbait, and exchanged a few quiet words with the owner, Clement Toussaint. Nothing out of the ordinary. Harold had been fishing those bayous longer than some trees had been growing. He was 71, retired 10 years from the St. John Parish Sheriff's Department, a man of routine and silence, with skin leathered by sun and habits carved in ritual. He fished every Tuesday and Saturday alone, and always left a note for his wife Willa on the fridge. That morning, the note simply read, "Out early, heading west, radio off, back before dinner." He never returned. The boat wasn't found, nor were his boots, his tackle box, or his thermos. Search parties swept through canals and bayous for weeks, dogs, divers, even helicopters, but the swamp swallowed everything. Locals whispered of gators, of accidents, or worse. Rumors thickened like the algae on the water. Some said he'd faked his death. Others murmured of debts, enemies, ghosts in the marsh. Behind closed doors, talk turned to Mitchell Lang, Harold's son-in-law, a volatile man with a short temper and a sharp tongue. Harold had never trusted him. "That boy's got black water behind the eyes," he once said to a neighbor. Then there was Lester Ray Delacroix, recently released from Angola after a 5-year sentence put there in part by Harold's testimony. He'd returned to Brielle just a month before Harold vanished, slipping into town with no fanfare, no welcome, and still no one thought to ask Emery Tabb, Harold's brother-in-law, Willa's younger sibling, a quiet man, lanky, soft-spoken, drawn to radios and repairs. He kept to himself in a converted tool shed behind the house, where the low hum of shortwave static hummed day and night. That summer, as the heat rose and the cypress trees thickened with moss, Brielle forgot Harold. The swamp took what it wanted. But 5 years later, the boat surfaced, and with it, a question: had Harold really gone fishing, or had someone lured him into those waters to make sure he never came back? The letter was brittle, water-stained at the edges, but the ink had held. Investigators photographed it twice before touching it. Already, the corners were disintegrating. It wasn't signed. Just the initial L, but its tone was unmistakable rage distilled into 10 short lines. You think putting me away made you clean? You think 5 years in Angola made me forget? We're not done, old man. You buried things worse than me. You forget I know your name ain't clean either. Let's go back to the water, see what floats. It sounded like Lester Ray Delacroix. Everyone said so. Delacroix had served time for battery drug possession and obstruction charges Harold Tabb had compiled. He was a known liar, a known drunk, and at the time of Harold's disappearance, newly free and bitter. The letter seemed like confirmation, almost too clean. Detective Alan Renfro, who had taken over the cold file, noted that detail. People don't write threats like that, he said, not unless they want them found. Still, Lester Ray became the obvious suspect. His record was public. He had motive. And the note was deliberate in its menace. But no one could answer a simple question: how had it gotten into the boat? The tackle box itself had rusted hinges and a hairline crack across the lid. Someone had closed it gently, then set it beneath the bench as if nothing were amiss. A faint oil smell still clung to the inner plastic, a mixture of worm dirt and tobacco so specific it caught Deputy Roth's attention. Someone opened this box more than once, he noted. It's too organized, too careful. Fingerprinting yielded nothing useful. The Louisiana humidity had erased nearly all trace, but the initial L took hold. It was passed from lip to lip like scripture. In a town as small as Bayou, memory stuck like gum to the sole of a boot. Some recalled that Lester had once said, "He won't see another sunrise if I catch him in the dark." That had been 5 years ago, but now it resurfaced like a bloated corpse. No one asked if it might be a plant. No one looked at the man who'd first labeled it vengeance. No one noticed that the letter's folds were too clean for 5 years in a swamp. And no one asked who else had a reason to point the finger. The smell was faint but distinct: smoked tobacco, old and stale, trapped inside the tackle box's plastic lining. The butts inside were dry, packed tight, their filters yellowed with time. 4 of them, all Winston Reds. It was a small brand, strong and bitter. In Braille, only a few locals smoked them. Harold never did, but Mitchell Lang did. Harold's son-in-law had been seen with the red-striped pack almost daily. He smoked one every night on the back porch while nursing a beer and complaining about the old man's rules. Mitchell had married Harold's only daughter, Marion, 6 years before the disappearance. Their marriage was strained quietly at first, then openly. Harold had never approved of Mitchell. Lazy, he called him. Loud when it suits him. Silent when it matters. The two men had argued often. Over money, over discipline, over Marion. Once a neighbor overheard Harold yelling, "You raise your voice at her again, I'll raise my hand to you." Mitchell had stormed off, crushed his cigarette on the porch railing, and said nothing. After Harold's disappearance, Mitchell was oddly restrained. He made no appearances at search efforts, gave no public statements. When pressed, he said, "He's gone. That swamp eats everything. Let it go." Now, 5 years later, his brand of cigarette is found in Harold's boat. Mitchell claimed he hadn't gone near the bayou since 1977. Allergies, he said. Can't stand the mold in the Cyprus air. But Roth noted that one of the butts was nearly intact. It had been put out carefully, not crushed or soaked. As if the smoker hadn't been rushed, hadn't feared being seen. Forensic analysis suggested the residue in the box was less than 5 years old. Maybe 4. Maybe 3. Which meant someone had returned to the boat, opened that box, sat and smoked and left a part of themselves behind. Roth looked again at the letter, and then at the butts. Too much fury in the letter, he muttered. Too much calm in the smoke. As the town eyed Lester Ray with suspicion, Roth scribbled a quiet note in the margin of his file. What was Mitchell trying not to say? The photograph was nearly missed, wedged beneath a seat plank swollen from years of moisture. Its corners were curled, its surface warped, but the image remained intact. 2 men locked in confrontation on a rickety wooden dock. One Harold Tabb jaw clenched, arm extended. The other Ray Ledoux, his fishing partner gripping a small brown ledger half tucked under one arm as if torn from Harold's grasp. In the background, the familiar outline of Ledoux's boathouse on Flat-Tail Bayou. Late afternoon shadows. A tackle bucket spilled at their feet, and between them, tension thick enough to split the dock. Detective Renfro recognized the ledger immediately. Harold had kept meticulous personal records, expenses, contacts, even fishing yields written in tiny block letters. But this wasn't Harold's handwriting, and the ledger in the photo wasn't in any of his possessions when he vanished. Renfro paid Ledoux a visit the following day. Ray Ledoux had aged poorly, sagging face, sun-scorched skin, nicotine-stained fingers. He lived alone in the same boathouse, now sagging like its owner. When asked about the photograph, he squinted and shrugged. "Long time ago," he said. "Could have been anything." "What about the ledger?" Ray paused. A beat too long. No idea. The pause told a different story. Neighbors remembered a fight the week before Harold disappeared. A loud one. Voices carried over the bayou, one shouting, one threatening. The subject money. And something about moving numbers around. Ray had a reputation for side dealings, bait sold off the books, odd jobs for cash. A whisper of gambling. Nothing proven. Renfro returned that evening with a search warrant. In a box beneath Ledoux's freezer, he found 7 ledgers, all decades old. 6 were routine bait sales fuel logs, customer tabs. But the 7th, bound in cracked vinyl, its spine torn, contained something else. Names, dates, figures, cash amounts. Some matched the town's old roadwork contracts. Others matched local business permits from the late 70s. At the top of several pages, underlined twice in faded ink, tab no first name. No explanation. The photograph was beginning to speak. But the ledger even more so. Renfro asked Ledoux one last time, "What were you hiding from Harold Ledoux?" Lit a Winston red and said, "Nothing he didn't already know." Then he turned on the radio and tuned to channel 197, a channel that hadn't been active in years. Emery Tabb lived in a lean-to shed behind the old Tabb house, not far from where Harold and Willa had once shared a porch swing and sweet tea on summer evenings. Where the siding had once been white time, had turned it to gray. The antenna on the roof was patched with aluminum foil and string. Inside, the hum of radio static never stopped. He wasn't reclusive, just quiet. Polite in a way that drew little notice. When Harold vanished, Emery grieved in silence. Never offered theories. Never joined search parties. When asked where he'd been that day, he simply said, "At the shed listening to the bands." No one pressed further. But Emery had a hobby that bordered on obsession: amateur radio. He kept a wall of dials, receivers, and cobbled together equipment. He didn't talk to people, just listened. The neighbors thought it was harmless, quirky. "He's chasing ghosts," someone once joked. After the boat was found, Roth stopped by Emery's shed. Inside, the air was dry and metallic. The scent of old solder and heated plastic sharp in the nostrils. Stacks of radio logs, dates, frequencies, call signs lined the shelves in tight handwritten rows. "Did you ever go fishing with Harold?" Roth asked casually. Emery didn't look up from the transceiver. "Once or twice. Long ago." "Were you with him in '79? A pause. "No." "Did he talk about Ray Ledoux? Or Mitchell?" Emery adjusted a dial. Static rose, then fell. "He didn't talk about people much. Preferred weather, fish, tides." But Roth noticed something strange on the workbench, a cracked dial face, just like the one from Harold's boat radio. The markings on Emery's rig were scratched, the same tuning knob sheared in half-identical damage. Not from age, from force. The dial rested perfectly aligned on channel 197. "Why this channel?" Roth asked. Emery hesitated. "It's where I first heard him go quiet." "You mean Harold?" Another silence. "I mean the air. That morning it just cut out." Roth didn't press. He thanked Emery and left, but something itched. Emery had never been questioned in 1979. He'd kept to himself, invisible behind a wall of white noise. Yet his radio was tuned precisely to the same forgotten channel Harold's boat radio had been locked on when it was found. Roth circled the note in his file, underlined it 3 times. Emery tab. Cracked dial, 197. Why? They found Lester Ray Delacroix in a bait shack near the edge of Plaquemines Parish, half a county south. He worked there for cash, scooping minnows, scrubbing tanks, fixing nets. His hands were always wet, his sleeves always rolled. His parole papers had expired 2 years earlier. No warrants, no pending charges. He kept his head down. When Detectives Roth and Renfro arrived, he didn't run. He recognized Harold's name before they even asked. "Y'all think I did it, don't you?" he said, crouched on a broken milk crate behind the shack. His voice was slower now, wearier. "Been waiting 5 years for someone to knock?" "You threatened him," Roth said flatly. "There's a letter." Lester laughed, a dry, raspy sound. "Yeah, I threatened a lot of people back then. Doesn't mean I killed them. You were in town, June of '79. Lester nodded. "For 2 days. Came back to bury my mother. Stayed in her trailer, drank, cried, left. Asked the clerk at Lewis's Gas, he drove me back to Baton Rouge. We will. But that letter," Lester said, leaning forward, "that's too neat. I was never neat. I don't fold things, detective. I burn 'em." Renfro watched his hands. Strong hands, scarred knuckles, calloused fingertips, but no tremble, no twitch, no avoidance. "I hated Harold," Lester admitted. "He ruined my life, told my girl to leave me, made sure the judge saw every inch of my file. I did 5 years, and I earned every one of them, but I didn't kill him." Roth pulled out a copy of the photograph, the one of Harold and Ray Ledoux. Lester blinked. "Ray, I didn't know they were still talking. I thought Harold cut him off after the fire." "What fire?" "The one at the storage shed behind the bait shop. Harold kept records there. Said Ray owed him something. 2 weeks later it burned. Funny how y'all forgot that part. The detectives left with more than they came for. Lester wasn't innocent, but he wasn't a liar either." As Roth slid behind the wheel, he looked down at the letter again. Too deliberate. Too legible. And if Lester hadn't written it, someone had wanted the world to believe he did. Someone who knew just enough about Lester's anger to forge his voice. The neighbor's name was Donnell Breaux. She remembered it clear as glass, the sound of shouting across the cypress water. Said it happened one night in early June, just before Harold vanished. "I was feeding ducks by the dock," she told Roth. "Sun was going down. Then I heard Harold and Ray Ledoux screaming about money, about something that was gonna blow up in everyone's face." She paused, and then a crack like bone on wood. Roth's brow tightened. "You're sure?" Donnell nodded slowly. "Ray came limping down the bank 2 minutes later, holding his jaw like it was about to fall off." Ledoux hadn't mentioned that. Hospital records confirmed it. On June 12, 1979, Ray Ledoux was treated for a hairline mandibular fracture. Cause of injury, fall from boat dock. No police report filed. Back at Ledoux's shack, Roth returned with a warrant for the property, not just the ledgers, but his tool storage bin's attic crawl. What they found in a locked tackle trunk was worse than expected. The same cracked vinyl ledger from the photograph, warped from damp, but still legible. But this one contained no fishing figures. It contained names, town names, contractors, payment slips, some signed by local officials, others unsigned but labeled in Harold's tight block lettering, "Cover-up Second Bypass Fund, Emery Power Company, Shell. Ledoux, 6K cash under table, Octite 78, a network. Not of criminals, but of men laundering county road funds through ghost projects. And at the bottom of the last page, if I disappear, start with the radio." Renfro photographed everything in silence. They confronted Ledoux again, this time with the ledger open between them. He said nothing for a long while, then looked up with bloodshot eyes. It was supposed to stay buried. That ledger, Harold said he was tired of carrying it. Said he was going to take it to the feds. His voice cracked. "I told him not to. Told him it'd kill him." Roth asked, "Did you know?" "But I knew someone would." And who had the most to lose if Harold talked? Ledoux didn't answer. But Renfro already knew. The name in the margin. Scribbled. Almost an afterthought. Emery. The number sat etched into Roth's thoughts like a bad frequency, 197. It matched the broken dial on Harold's boat radio, matched the setting on Emery's battered transceiver. Not a coincidence. But the meaning remained elusive. Roth contacted a regional ham operator out of Baton Rouge, a wiry man named Gilbert Crane, with a wall of radios and a memory like a filing cabinet. Channel 197 Crane scratched his chin. "That's not a real band. That's something someone custom programmed. Can you track what it was used for?" Crane pulled out a notebook. "In '79. Maybe. Give me a day." When he called back, his voice was tight. "You're not gonna like it." He'd found log scraps of chatter picked up by other hobbyists during June 1979, mostly static. But one flagged snippet came through. "Bring the box. He's gonna make noise. Meet me past Duck Cove." Logged. June 19th, 5:04 a.m. Same day, Harold vanished. The voice wasn't Harold's, nor was it Ray's or Lester's. It was soft, clipped, almost shy. Roth played it back 3 times before the realization struck. It was Emery, his tone so quiet it almost disappeared. Not threatening, not angry, but unmistakable. Roth drove back to the shed. Emery was there, hunched over the receiver, tuning static into something coherent. The light through the dusty window caught the sweat on his brow. "You still use Channel 187, Roth asked. Emery didn't look up. Sometimes. For noise. For memories. A pause. "It's just numbers." Roth placed a recorder on the desk. Pressed play. The voice filled the shed. "Bring the box. He's gonna make noise." Emery's eyes didn't move. His hand trembled only slightly. "What box, Emery? I don't know." "Duck Cove." Silence. "He trusted you," Roth said softly. "You were his brother. He was going to expose them. He told you first." Emery said nothing, but his hand moved to the dial, turned it slowly. Static rose, and beneath it, faint but real, came a second voice. "He won't talk if he don't come back." Roth leaned in, and in the background, the low whine of Harold's boat engine. One last trip. One last signal. A trap broadcast in plain air. They found it by accident. Aerial surveillance paired with topographic overlays from old county survey maps revealed an area of unusual disturbance, a patch of land near Duck Cove, where the tree line had shifted subtly in satellite photos between 1979 and 1985. What had once been a dense copse of bald cypress was now a scarred clearing barely visible from the main bayou. It took Roth and Renfro 4 hours by flatboat and hip waders to reach it. What remained of the shack leaned into the water like a man confessing. The wood was warped, its shingles green with moss and rot. One side had caved in, swallowed partially by the mud. A rusted sign still hung by a single nail. "Private, no mooring." Inside, the air was sweet and sick. The kind of mildew that carries memory. The floor slanted boards soft enough to sigh underfoot. Roth's flashlight swept across the walls lined with ledgers, all matching the vinyl binding from Ray Ledoux's trunk. Some warped, others disintegrated entirely, but many intact. Dozens. Names, payments, county contracts, notes in different hands. But always one repeating mark in the margins, E.T. Renfro found a coffee tin beneath the floorboards, sealed with wax and wrapped in oilcloth. Inside, a set of keys tagged with Harold's initials, and next to them, buried in a box of old photographs, Harold's pocket knife blade rusted shut, the handle etched with the word, "Forgive." But what silenced the room was the bloodstain, faint but still visible at the base of the rear wall, dragged in a crescent arc. No bones, no body. Just an old canvas sheet in the corner, stiff with time and dark blotches. A single button snapped clean through the center lay beneath it. "Do you smell that?" Roth asked. Renfro nodded. Salt and copper. They didn't speak of what it meant. Not yet. The swamp didn't need words, it kept its own records. Back at the dock, Roth sat with the ledgers, flipping pages in silence. On the final page of the final book, beneath an entry dated June 20th, 1979, one line was scribbled in tight, uneven print: "The water covers all things, but not forever." It was signed E. Tab. They brought Emery in just after sunset. He came willingly, without a lawyer, without a coat, just a damp flannel shirt and a calmness that unnerved even Renfro. He sat across from Roth in the narrow interview room, the hum of fluorescent lights mixing with the distant creak of swamp insects through the open ventilation duct. Roth slid the final ledger across the table, then the keys, then the knife. Emery looked at them without touching. "You were with him that morning," Roth said. Emery didn't deny it. His hands folded neatly. "He asked me to come. Said he had something to show me. Proof of what they'd done, Mitchell Ray, the parish treasurer, maybe even Willa. And you didn't want him to." Emery's jaw tightened. "I wanted him to wait, to think." Harold was many things, but patient wasn't one. He thought exposing the truth would set us free. He glanced at the door. He didn't understand what it would destroy. Roth opened the audio file. Emery's voice filled the room again. "Bring the box. He's gonna make noise. Meet me past Duck Cove." Emery winced slightly. He didn't know I'd already warned them. "You told Ray." "I told them all." I panicked. I thought they'd scare him off, take the ledgers, threaten a little, nothing more. "What happened in the shack?" Emery's eyes glossed, not with tears, just weight. "He screamed at me. Said I betrayed him. Called me a coward." He reached for the door. A pause. "And I..." The silence that followed was so thick even the air seemed to still. "I didn't mean to kill him," Emery whispered. "I shoved him." His head struck the stove corner. It made a sound I'll never forget. He convulsed once, then nothing. He looked down at his palms. I sat there for an hour, listening to static, praying it wasn't real. Roth asked, "And the others?" They helped hide it. Not the body that I took. Alone. Weighted his pockets. The current did the rest. He gave a soft, hollow laugh. "Funny. I kept thinking he'd float back. He never did. You left the tackle box. I had to point them somewhere else. Lester. He hated Harold. It made sense. He even hated me. Perfect. And the photo, I hoped someone would see the ledger and understand." Roth stood. Emery didn't resist. As the cuffs clicked shut, he said only one thing. "He was my brother, and I failed him." The press never came to Braille. There were no cameras, no satellite trucks. Just a short column in the Times-Picayune: retired officer's disappearance, solved after 5 years. Relative in custody. The swamp offered no body, no funeral, only a ledger and a confession. Harold Tabb's name was added to a stone in the churchyard. No remains, just dates. June 19th, 1979. That was all. Renfro stood beneath the hanging moss 1 week later, ledger in hand, the pages sealed now in evidence bags. But not everything in it pointed to Emery or Ray. Some of it led higher. Contractors, county officials. Willa Tabb's name never appeared, but her signature once did. Quiet settlements followed. A few sudden retirements, one unexplained suicide. Emery pleaded guilty to manslaughter. No trial, no appeals. He said he wanted silence. In his final statement to the court, he read only one line. "Evil doesn't always shout. Sometimes it hums quietly in the walls, and we learn to sleep beside it." Back at the house, Mary and Harold's daughter sat on the porch holding her son's hand. Mitchell had left weeks before the arrest. No forwarding address, no goodbye. Just a half-smoked Winston Red in the ashtray and a dent in the bedroom door. As they closed Emery's shed for the last time, Renfro switched off the radio one final time. The static died. Gone was the constant hum. Gone was the signal that had all along held the memory of murder. As they stepped outside, the air smelled cleaner. The trees shifted gently in the wind. As they locked the shed, Marion looked at the boards one last time. The real journey was just beginning. In the end, that was the lesson: evil might hide behind familiar faces, but truth survives in what we choose to see, even when it hurts. As they moved toward the dock, Marion squeezed her son's hand. "I don't know what's left," I just know we can't go back." He looked up at her. "Then let's go forward." They stepped toward healing, toward a future they would build one day at a time.
Thank you for listening to Brody's Stories. Until we meet again.